do so. But I'd like to welcome you all. My name's Louise. I'm the Chief Exec at Sheffield Chamber of Commerce and Industry. I'm joined by my colleague Dan Fell, who is the Chief Exec at Doncaster Chamber. We need to say big congratulations to Dan, who was awarded an MBE in the King's Birthday Honours List, which is a real honour and a huge recognition for all his hard work. So I want to put that on record and on the recording. So congratulations, Dan. And Carl and Jack from CADA. And Sean from Doncaster, and we've also got special guests here today, Toby from Fleet and Rachel from the Clear Group. So just in terms of the order of play today, as I mentioned, the webinar is being recorded. Today's presentation is an opportunity for us to bring to life the sector insights that our colleagues and stakeholders in the professional services sector have told us about the skills pipeline. As you're probably aware, Chambers have been involved in the local skills improvement plans for coming on up for 2 years now. And that is about putting businesses at the heart of the skills system and giving businesses the opportunity to speak to our education providers and training providers as to what is needed in the world of work. And help the two shape provision and work more closely together. So this is our 4th report in a series of 6. So we've had construction, manufacturing, the visitor economy. Today is professional services, and Dan's going to tell you a little bit more about what's coming down the pipeline and what's next. As we have the opportunity to have a Q&A later, please feel free to ask any questions. You can save them up and ask them verbally. You can pop them in the chat and I can collate them for later, and whatever suits you, but we would really encourage audience participation. So I'm going to hand over to Carl and Jack from CADA, who are going to talk us through the report. We are then going to hear from Rachel and Toby, who are going to bring to life their employer insights, and then we'll have the opportunity for Q&A. So I'm going to pop myself on mute. I'm going to hand over to Carl and Jack, and look forward to hearing more from you both. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Thanks ever so much for coming along. My name's Carl Dalgleish. I'm Managing Director at CADA Research. We're an economic development consultancy based in Park Hill Flats in Sheffield. And I'll introduce my colleague, Jack, who's going to share the presentation with me. We are in the same office, but we're in separate rooms. Jack's that way, I'm this way. We just thought it'd be easier to be at our PCs. So if you'd like to just do the next slide. I'm going to just tell you a bit about the research. These were short little studies designed to lift the bonnet, as we say, on skills and speak to people in key sectors. So it's the 5th and final one. We've done manufacturing, construction, leisure and tourism. We merged a few in there, and culture. We have done an aviation report, but we're yet to do the seminar. And this is finance and professional services. Our target was to speak to 20 to 30 people in the sector. That's people that we know through different associations, people recommended by chambers, that sort of thing. We got a really good response to this one, and we got 27 people, and we were quite pleased also with the caliber of people, some of which are on this call. We spoke to some amazing people that are running, some global practices in this area. So I suppose the purpose of these is part of the local skills improvement plan. What we're trying to do is just get an understanding of what employers are thinking now. So it's a quick here and now to complement some of the other chambers' work around their surveys and things like that. So we designed this questionnaire, and being part of the LSIT, we were able to actually ask principals at colleges what they wanted asked. So the questions that we asked were really sort of tailored and designed specifically to ensure that providers could respond. And they're quite in-depth interviews. Those that have been through them will know, it's quite an in-depth process covering all aspects of skills. But really, with only 27 firms, it's just designed to give us, not represent the whole sector, just a snapshot of what's around. And I know that providers have found them useful because we've had curriculum managers tell us that it's started to shape some of their thinking. Oh, just to mention as well, we also had a round table at Sheffield College. So Lou and her colleagues, we went to the training restaurant there, which is amazing, by the way. If nobody's been, I would recommend it. And we met Toby and lots of other colleagues from the sector. an informal discussion about what they were looking for new recruits. And I think, without wishing to steal Toby's thunder, he may say a little bit about that later on. It was a really useful discussion. So, I mean, bit of background about the sector, which you know so well. The range of career opportunities is phenomenal within the sector. Professional services, they're the backbone of the economy, specialist knowledge in areas, business, law, accounting, consulting, marketing. We all use these services. And some of us pay for high quality support for this. So, real underpinning of the sector. It's a complex and dynamic sector. We've got banking, corporate banking, investment banking, payments, wealth and asset management, and sort of emerging sectors like well-being and things. So we have got a history of sort of legal and professional services that's developed in our sub-region, and that's really gone on to develop some quite global businesses. And we've also got lots and lots of really small players as well. So first thing we asked them, I believe, Jack. Oh, let me just go back that one. That's just an image of Heart of the City in Sheffield. We have got some amazing businesses in those buildings, CMS, Henry Boot, all sorts. So there is an emerging cluster in Sheffield at the moment, and other city centres are investing in there. They tend to take the high-end office spaces. Other city centres are investing in premium office space too. So just to give you a sort of visual sense of what we're talking about here. So we asked people about their future priorities. We asked them also whether they consider themselves to be people-centered businesses. And this sector just realized it was a really people-based business with client-facing services, absolutely fundamental to the success of businesses. It's a really flexible sector, inclusive working practices, career development pathways, a really open sector, many listening to employee sentiments around informing their sort of office cultures. Some of these places are incredible places to work. Probably some of the best places you'll get to work in South Yorkshire. We asked people about their growth ambitions. We didn't find many pursuing really, really aggressive expansion. There is one caveat, which I'll mention shortly, but really it's about maintaining service quality, keeping staff well-being, and thinking about how you develop service-specific opportunities. Now, we have seen some mergers and acquisitions in this sector, and that sometimes from firms outside the area. So maintaining a unified culture has been a real priority for those firms. Particularly when it's firms outside the region. So that may have implications for the types of roles available locally. There are rising costs. All firms are experiencing that, and we found that across the sectors. It's no different here. Perhaps not got the energy costs of some of the other ones, but people are exploring service diversification, making efficiencies, and using technology was a bit of a theme that came off. So some of them are trying to look at new ways of income, reducing reliance on big contracts and developing their internal systems. So they're not necessarily looking to grow massively, all of the ones we want to, but it's more about making efficiencies. One concern is around mid-level roles, quite good at that first level graduate role. Sometimes it's hard to retain them with the lure of Manchester and Leeds and London. Not to say we haven't got a fantastic offer. Core competencies that are required. Obviously, research and writing skills really important in law, numeracy and accounting. Analytical skills and attention to detail was something that Toby and his colleagues brought out at the dinner. Real world thinking is quite important. And I'll come on to some of the softer skills shortly. So new careers then, they've got to be good at career rapport building, be confident networkers. That doesn't come overnight. A willingness to learn was seen as really important. And something the lawyers and the accountants love is commercial awareness. And it takes a little bit of time for new recruits to get that. And the other one I thought was really interesting from our dinner was emotional intelligence, empathy, and sensitivity. Why, you may ask? Well, that's because we're sometimes dealing with some really tricky situations, whether it's well-being, whether it's finance, or whether it's a divorce or something like that, or a legal dispute. So those soft skills here are absolutely crucial, perhaps important as any other sector that we spoke to. Now, this sector's quite regulated. That means it comes with a lot of exams. So your lawyers and your accountants have to do your SQEs and other qualifications. That can be a bit of a challenge because you've got employers having to support people through that as well. Some quite stressful exams with not easy pass rates. So that was seen as a bit of a challenge for some of the sectors. And digital skills are becoming ever so more important. The lawyers still quite like their paper-based stuff, but they are moving to digital tools, cloud-based software, particularly in accounting. The speed of digital adoption is a real challenge in this sector. So you've got software for case management, you've got finance accounting practice software, and you've got insurers using very specialist broker software. So digital natives, the new recruits, actually cope quite well. And one of the things they need to learn is adaptability, because you guys are using a real range of different software techniques, some which you need to unlearn and relearn and switch from one to the other. My accountant in Doncaster, for instance, I know she's competent in 4 or 5 different accounting software tools, and she has to be able to understand mine to integrate with her own. Next one. So just, yeah, soft skills came through loads here in this one. The lawyers and accountants mentioned integrity, honesty, and dependability. We had a talk with 3 curriculum managers in the over the dinner, and we talked about the importance of learning agility, because some of the things I've talked about, handling multiple deadlines, can be a really challenging job. And I think that the conclusion was providers could really work with employers to develop some of those work readiness skills. And employers probably need to accept that not all new recruits will be the finished article, so that they can support building resilience, but there's going to be a need for sort of workplace development as well. We did look at green practice, and that's becoming more commonplace. And in fact, they're probably, if you were to offer things like carbon literacy and how you could integrate sustainability into the practice, that will probably be well received from providers are able to do that. We also talked about automation and AI. There's a bit of a reticence to jump full steam into that, although there's an acceptance that it's coming. So I think introductory tailored AI packages or automation packages might be helpful. I think what one people said, in fact, it came again from our dinner, Toby, wasn't it? It was about not inhibiting critical thinking and overuse of AI. So I think AI's got definite place to play. It's articulating where it can play within the sector. So some fascinating insights from people there. There's some quotes that I'm not going to talk through, but I'll just leave you to read through briefly. There's one there about people-centered cultures that I talked about, one about sort of focus, and the other one about AI. And that's the point about the critical thinking. Jack, should we come on to your bit now about current skills?
Yeah, no problem. So we obviously asked employers about current skills needs and touched upon recruitment as well. So the sector as a whole is very open to apprenticeships. They're sort of seen as a viable route into the industry. And there's also a rise in apprenticeship programs as well, which isn't necessarily the theme that's been across all sectors, which apprenticeships has been a challenge for many. And this sort of reflects the need for the skilled professionals, the sort of skills that Carl was touching on earlier for needs in banking, investment, insurance, etc. While they are gaining ground and are becoming more popular, there still are barriers to apprenticeships, particularly when adopting them or expanding them. These are structural and operational barriers, but also tied to sort of the broader shifts that we're seeing within the workplace. So the move to hybrid working, just general capacity constraints that are faced by employers in terms of deadlines and billable time, and also just the sort of uncertainty around funding as well. So the sort of withdrawal of level 7 funding as well was cited by a couple of employers. We asked employers about resistance to change when embedding new procedures. So it's not really a widespread issue, certainly not in the kind of keeping that has been with some of the other reports that we've done. And when it does arise, it's not really due to the unwillingness of the employees, but it's sort of three common factors that came through for most of the interviews. So time pressures, which I just mentioned, sort of differing career ambitions, and obviously the need to offer flexible and varied ways of learning as well. In terms of the gaps the sector's facing, so areas like digital infrastructure, quite regulation-heavy disciplines as well, and sort of mid-senior management gaps, particularly in sort of legal, consultancy, etc. firms, could be a challenge in terms of constraining future growth. So in terms of competition, so Sheffield faced competition from sort of the other big northern cities, and whereas employers from sort of Barnsley, Rotherham, and Doncaster had thinner pickings when it came to recruitment for employees compared to some of the Sheffield firms who have the quite close ties to the academic institutions at the universities. The sector has very rigorous and thorough recruitment and onboarding procedures. We talked with employers about sort of all the different measures that they have. There was sort of note about the challenge that AIs pose when it comes to recruitment. So there's been a growth of AI CVs that are flooding the marketplace, and that sort of led to a lot of employers adopting more of an in-person approach again for interviews and for sort of tracking going through applications. Legal and finance firms typically as well, we've noted there, use sort of departmental leads and senior partners in recruitment processes, especially for specialist or sort of higher stakes role. There is sort of a shift towards more structured appraisals and career conversations, and there's a key emphasis really on focusing on two-way feedback. And as I just said, employers have clear structured pathways, and sort of recognising the value of supporting employee health and well-being is a particular note at the minute. Flexible hours, hybrid working, hardwired into the sector. There is sort of a preference for early career employees to spend more time in the office as part of their development, less sort of keen on them taking too much time to work from home. But this sort of flexible approach, they've sort of found supported culture and collaboration and sort of maintained those people-centered cultures. And obviously the benefit and offer of staff development and flexibility was key to attract and retain staff. And as I said, they're prioritizing well-being, boosts retention, reduces absenteeism, and builds loyalty as well. And sort of in that tight labour market, as the current situation is, creating a values-driven, supportive culture is seen as a competitive advantage by a lot of firms. And celebrating successes is quite common as well. From sort of the other reports we've done, a lot of employers from different sectors said they'd like to do a bit more in terms of celebrating their employees' successes, both at an individual and collective level, but certainly across the financial and professional services sector, it seems to be something that everyone's doing quite well, which is really good to see. And as Carl mentioned before, we've got a few quotes here. This is from one company around the sort of openness to apprenticeships, one employer touching upon hard to fill vacancies and recruitment process as well. A quote there about how they approach that in terms of getting in employees and meeting their sort of skills, needs, and demand.
Yeah, so you won't be surprised to hear people use both internal and external training solutions. And internal training, a lot of people get experience, new recruits get experience across departments to give them a rounded and deep understanding of the business. You know, sometimes law firms, for instance, have accountant practices as well, and, you know, different specialisms. The industry accreditations often mean staff study off-site too. Most of the firms, bigger firms we talked to in particular, had a defined training strategy. Some of them even had training portals and automated personal development plans and appraisals, so you could all upload it onto HR systems and things. Some did have some autonomy within their departments in particular, or in smaller firms, to do very, very tailored training. Regular, in terms of the sort of relation, we asked about the relationship with providers. And some had sort of dedicated training managers, and that seemed to work really well. Some of them found it quite hard to articulate their skills gaps and training needs, and often they develop one strong relationship with a particular training provider. But there is a whole industry of sort of professional advisors that people use as well, sort of leadership and confidence coaches and external coaches, quite a lot of use of that. One thing that did come across from larger firms that I spoke to was that their company values were really important. And it was really important that they were able to convey their values as importantly as their training needs to providers. So providers really need to understand company ambitions and the ethos of the senior leadership, and that would help. That helped, in their view, ensure the training was much more tailored. Mentoring is really quite important in this sector, particularly when you're talking about some quite sort of complex, legal discussions and things. So shadowing people's really confident and help people build their confidence. And it can improve diversity within the sector. And then some of them have tailored leadership programs as well. Although some did say they just don't know where to go for some of those leadership programs. And we've heard that sort of time and time again, haven't we, from some of the other sectors. CPD is really common, particularly in regulated sectors. So, for instance, some businesses, require their employees to have a minimum of 30 hours CPD. Tax professionals obviously need to require specific courses to stay accredited, and we get new announcements all the time. So some of them have to take a really flexible approach to that. Some of the smaller practices would like bite-sized training at accessible points, sort of units of training would be helpful. They'd always welcome more signposting. A lot of them, again, didn't know what grants and support was available. And I know we've done a lot to raise the visibility of South Yorkshire, but it feels like, that's like an ongoing thing. Unlike construction and manufacturing, you won't be surprised that finance lawyers and accountants aren't rushing to put on their VR and AR headsets at the moment. But some were moderately open to it, particularly, for instance, dealing with sort of sensitive areas in a safe and controlled environment. But I suppose they'd need some convincing from providers. Otherwise, they would struggle with adoption there. So Jack's going to do the last section, and then I've just got a short conclusion. Then I'm going to hand over to you, if that's all right, Dan. And then we're going to go to, are we going to you next, or the employers first? You, isn't it, Dan?
No, it's to guests from the employers,
Guests,
Carl.
and then Dan. Yeah, thank you. Get the sequence right.
Perfect. So we spoke to employers about their openness to engaging with training providers, with those further removed from the labour market, with sort of other sectoral collaborations that might be going on. So there was generally an openness to working with those sort of further removed from the labour market, sort of veterans, prison leavers, those that have been out of education, training, employment for some time. There was also good examples of inclusive hiring processes. But there was a bit of a tendency for employers to sort of request a little bit more understanding about how to properly embed these practices, or how to go about sort of targeting these groups or cohorts, particularly as well for some sort of subsectors. FCA approvals required for certain positions which need a controlled function, which might be a slight barrier. In terms of sort of younger people, there is a blind spot for young people regarding roles available in the sector. So sort of inspiring the next generation was found to be a little bit difficult in some areas, and early engagement with schools as a result was a key priority that was mentioned quite a few times, to sort of showcase the sort of diversity and variation of careers and pathways into the sector, and sort of make it more appealing to the next generation. Particularly sort of career initiatives such as See It Be It, which I'm sure a lot of people are aware of, were sort of mentioned, name dropped, as quite helpful in changing perceptions about the sector, demystifying any opportunities or barriers that young people might face, and challenging sort of any stereotypes as well. In terms of sort of employees' engagement with education providers, that's generally through apprenticeships and work experience offers, and the only sort of key barrier that was sort of mentioned was lack of time and resource constraints in terms of doing that engagement more regularly. Proactive communication and sort of maybe incentives, placements for students might increase the collaboration with education and skills providers if that was something that was available. And in terms of sort of collaborations with others in the sector and other companies, it's generally more informal networking, or sort of knowledge sharing or referrals between peers. There is an appetite to do more of that within South Yorkshire in terms of engaging with others in the sector, but competition was highlighted by a couple of people as potentially a bit of a challenge when it comes to doing that more broadly. And again, we've just got a couple of quotes there from some employers about engaging those cohorts that I mentioned, and partnering with education and skills providers as well.
So big points then, a vital part of the sector, some exceptional career pathways, but surprisingly invisible given that. Not everybody's got a full understanding of what it's like to work in the sector, in accountancy, for instance, or, in well-being, perhaps more so in law. So definitely scope for more meaningful interactions. Soft skills really came through, and I don't know if it's just that discussion, but it kept coming through about how important it was to hone those skills, and that will require a collective effort on part of providers, employers, and recruits, both pre and post employment. So don't expect to see the finished article every time, is what people kept telling us. So final points then, Jack. There's a definite opportunity to intensify employer interactions and a general willingness to do that, a pretty openness. AI and automation gradually transforming those back office functions. So that will free up staff for more value adding stuff, but not at the expense of the human dimension. And again, we've mentioned that it's a really positive sector in terms of flexibility, hybrid working. I'm delighted to welcome two big hitting high flyers. Rachel provides our HR support at CADA. So I know a little bit about what she does, but I'll let you introduce you. And Toby is a partner. Have I got that right? You can introduce yourself properly, but someone very senior at a really important legal practice. Should we just get your perceptions of what you've just heard about your sector? Rachel, I know you're involved with the SPA and you go in and out of businesses all day long, don't you? So just give us your thoughts and reflections first, Rachel, and then I'll come on to you, Toby, and then we'll hand over to Dan, if that's okay. Thank you, Rachel. Welcome, and thank you for speaking to us as part of the research as well, or your company.
No problem. All right. Thank you, Carl and Jack, and thank you to the Chambers for having us here. So yes, for those that don't know me, I am Rachel Story from Clear Risk Management. So we provide HR consultancy advice to businesses across the region, mainly SMEs. So we come across a lot of businesses, especially in the professional risk section, such as yourselves, and really interesting reading through the report that CADA have produced. Everything rings true from what our clients have been talking to us about over the past few years. One of the really interesting points that I noticed was the reference to sustainable growth and the steady growth that companies are wanting. Over the last 3 or 4 years, we've noticed quite significant amount of businesses that are being acquired or are acquiring others. I don't know, Toby, if you've seen that similar with your clients, but if you look at our business based in Doncaster, our office, I think most of the estate now is owned by larger groups. I do feel like that's settling down now, so hopefully we're back on a trajectory of that organic growth, which would be great to see. Really interesting though, looking at people's succession plans and again that reference that middle management level, and whether they have enough people coming through to progress into those senior leadership roles. Touching on the mid-level management, I think part of this is potentially a backdrop of what happened during COVID. So we had the Great Resignation, as we called it at the time, where people were making big career moves, career changes, and it was very much an employee market. People could select what role they wanted for what price, and we got into a situation of paying probably higher salaries than we would usually offer for less responsibility, those employees. And we're potentially a little bit stuck in that region now, where we've got people that are earning good money and not necessarily wanting to take on those responsibilities. I think it'll be really interesting to see if there's a shift now, which is really, really challenging. And I'm not expecting people to suddenly say this is an easy and quick win. But whether there's a shift from the traditional progression within a business away from to progress and to be promoted, you must become a people manager. As we'll know, and I'm sure Toby's the same with a lot of his companies he deals with, we always say you don't promote your best person, especially when it's in an office sort of environment. You get people that are very good, very skillful. You put them as a people manager, and all of a sudden all their time's taken up with dealing with those individuals rather than doing the day job. But it's really hard, I think, for businesses to shift away from that traditional progression and look at whether you can have mid-level management, but they are of a particular skill set rather than the fact that they just manage people. And managing people is a really specific skill set, so don't underestimate how important that role is as well. So yes, I think that's a really challenging but interesting area that will develop over the next couple of years with businesses. The discussion around the welfare and the benefits, again, is really important at the moment. When it comes to recruitment, I think a lot of businesses are quite nervous at the moment about recruiting, especially with, of course, the NI increases and the wage increases back in April this year. We went through quite a few of our contacts and made redundancies just to prepare, not because people are necessarily struggling, but people are preparing, ready for these increases that they're having to take on over the coming years. You're in a position now we can't necessarily carry people if people aren't performing. Then we can't afford to bring them along. And again, that's going to develop over the next few months and years with all the potential employment law changes that are coming in from this government, that people are potentially quite nervous about recruiting because it's getting harder and harder to manage people that aren't hitting the mark, aren't performing well. So again, really, really crucial that people are on top of their processes, which in the professional industry, we do see people tend to be in an office environment. It's I wouldn't say easier because it's never easy, but it is, people have policies and processes in place a bit more rigid than those that are potentially in other industries. But when it comes to recruitment and supporting, bringing in the right people, bringing that skill set, that welfare, that benefits section, I think is really, really key. And it's not just a case of, oh, we'll put some extra benefits in that might not suit everyone in your workforce. So it's really understanding what's important to your employees. I read somewhere, and forgive me because I have no idea where it's from, but it was each benefit on average suits about 30% of your workforce. So if you put one thing in place, don't expect that to tick everyone's box. So it's just worth considering whether you get a employee engagement survey or something done to understand what your employees actually want. But it's a really, really key area. Alongside the flexibility, I know you said that I think this industry is good with the flexibility, that hybrid role, and getting that balance of getting the culture right, making sure people can be trained, but also giving people the flexibility to work from home and be available to do whatever you need to do from home when you want to. And that remains, that flexibility. Interestingly, the more recent generations coming into the workplace seem to want to be in the office more. So providing that environment and, as you say, the office space that's attractive and appealing to people is great for getting them in and encouraging them to be part of the team. So I think that's really important. Other than that, the only other area I was going to address is from a performance and absence point of view, really. I think, as you mentioned, the employment law changes that are coming in, I think it's really important for businesses to really bottom down what their processes are like, so that as part of their recruitment journey, we can manage people, get on top, and hopefully support people to stick around and bring them up into those slightly more senior positions over time. So I will leave it there. It's a lot from me, but obviously at the end, anyone got any questions, then please shout.
Thank you so much. Fascinating for me is that a couple of points, just to reiterate a couple of points there, the tailored provision of welfare benefits really important, clarity over workplace practices, and thinking about that mid-level and how you might, support progression within the workplace, or indeed whether progression is the right way to go. Thank you so much. It doesn't half help having someone who's in and out of businesses all day long to give us those insights. So really appreciate it. Toby, you're another man, presumably, that gets in front of a few businesses.
Yes, thanks, Carl. Yeah, so my name is Toby Buckner. I'm an employment law partner from Freed, to a national law firm. I'm based in Sheffield. Rachel, absolutely brilliant sort of summary. Interestingly, I was going to focus my part of today's discussion purely on skills. So
Excellent, yeah.
it's as if we've planned it. So so much for those. It was brilliant. I mean, yeah, the round table that we had where we discussed skills, it was really interesting to hear back from other professional services about what they were looking for from the new recruits, but also what they were looking for people who remain in their business, how you're going to develop people and how you can develop your staff whilst they're still in employment. And it's a really interesting exercise. You start off by kind of going, well, look, we're going to look at those core competencies, attention to detail, analytical thinking, commerciality, research and writing skills. Those are all kind of a given, that's what you kind of expect from commercial services. But in this, Carl, obviously you touched on this in your presentation there. What we kept coming back to was that emotional intelligence. And we started off by kind of looking at, well, what does that even mean? It means sensitivity, empathy, resilience, and resolve. And those are all really, really key aspects of professional services. It wasn't really something that I sort of considered at the start. So it was, well, what would a good lawyer look like? What would a good professional services person look like? And that communication skill, that emotional intelligence and the adaptability, that's what everyone around the table kept coming back to. I think, Carl, the term that you used for it, which I'm going to go away from here and take complete credit for, is real world thinking. And that really resonated because what we look at for people who are coming into a business, you want to see adaptability and you want to see that innovation that comes along with having new people in the business, whether they are at a junior level or at a more senior level. To innovate means to consider things differently and to challenge what's already in place, to challenge that norm and look for ways things can progress. But that comes from a place of being able to have the safety to fail, which is always interesting. Hard to hear a lawyer talking about failure, but you need to have the ability to give something a go and see if it works. If it doesn't work, have the support structure that's in place for it and kind of live that culture that comes with it, not just say, don't worry, we'll give you time to fail. But obviously, if you do fail, you get dismissed. Like no one needs that. What we do need is that safety net to be able to allow people to be able to innovate. But that's what comes under that real world thinking aspect of it. Because then it's all these things all together and how they definitely apply to sort of the way in which businesses can continue to operate. But that goes along together with like confidence. The confidence that comes from that is the ability to do all those things and still be able to progress. I think it was a really, really interesting discussion. I encourage anyone who has an opportunity in the future to certainly be involved in one of those round tables, because looking at not just those core skills, but how you develop those other professional attributes is just helping every business moving forward.
Thank you so much. Yeah, fascinating. I mean, it stuck with me as well. And I suppose what was interesting was how the curriculum managers embraced some of your ideas and thoughts and were thinking, well, how can we do this within the we had a real life situation, if you remember. We had some orders that were wrong, and we used that as a kind of case study of resilience and adaptation in the workplace. And it's, how can you teach that in a real life environment? And I think the curriculum managers took that away. Don't think they had all the answers, but I think what it resonated for them was the importance of some of those softer employability skills and how they might build those into some of the apprentice programs and things like that they're doing.
That's what was interesting because they were talking about hospitality, and they said that one of the tasks that they use for people in hospitality is to have a number of tables that are already set up. You've got that many people who are coming for dinner, and then to just throw in a whole load of more people that you have to then deal with.
That's really cruel, Toby.
It's super cruel, right? But I thought what was interesting about it is that applies directly to professional services as well. Because every day is so different. I have a list of things I start off with each day that it falls away because of the urgent jobs that kind of come through. And having that as a starter for those people who are learning those initial skills and learning how to adapt to that whole new different way of working is really interesting. And it was interesting to sort of hear the college's thoughts as they were going through that. To be like, yeah, we'll start to build those types of skills into it so that people are more resilient as they get towards the world of work.
Yeah. Thank you.
Just to add on that, Carl, from the resilience side, I don't know. I know Dan will of course know, but there's Harrison College in Doncaster who support those with neurodiverse conditions. It is a college, but to enter them into the workplace, and they do some brilliant preparation with them. So last Friday they were having students make calls to businesses to ask them questions. Just as if they were in the workplace, and not just for those with those particular conditions, but I think it's important across the board to be able to give young people the skill set to be able to just have conversations with those that are slightly more senior or slightly more daunting than the position you're in. So yeah, just thought that was a good
maybe as employers we could offer those opportunities for people. Not even, I'm not talking like a full-on 4-week placement, but actually it could be an afternoon in the workplace, a little taster of working with us on a particular challenge that we've got or something like that.
Yeah, I know it's hard for commitment for people. We find it challenging. You've got busy lives, but this was a 10-minute phone call that you take, and it's given them some confidence to take that and try again. So yeah, just small things like that I think will help.
Thank you. Dan, shall we just reflect on, do you want to reflect on that, or do you want to tell people a little bit about where we go from here, or a bit of both?
I think it's Lou to come in, guys, for a bit of a Q&A with the guests, but we appreciate you sort of co-chairing, if you like. So Lou, I'll defer back to you because you're in charge, mate.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, I was going to say I've unmuted myself in anticipation. But we have actually, there's a comment in the chat actually from Sam Trafford saying, great presentation, thanks from the University of Sheffield Careers and Employability Survey. To talking point about soft skills, this actually came up at the LSIP skills event at Magna last week. And he just wondered whether transferable or interpersonal skills could be used instead, just because soft has got certain connotations which might downplay their importance, and it can also contribute to sort of gender differences and gender bias. What was the phrase that came up with? Was it power skills, or what did that were used at the seminar? But yeah, I have some questions and thoughts and comments from the presentation from Carl, from Rachel and Toby, but it's not for me. So I will let other people, questions, comments, thoughts for either Carl, Rachel or Toby. If you want to pop hands up or pop something in the chat, I'm something like power skills, yeah. So, who has a question, comment or reflection or feedback for any of the panel, or for Jack or Carl at CADA? Flipping through, I can't see an immediate one, so I'm going to come in with one that I was really struck by. So I suppose whoever of you want to answer this. So in the report, there was quite a big focus about like the need for flexibility and inclusive environment, hybrid working. Equally, acknowledgement that there's a challenge in developing leadership and power skills. How did the two of those coexist? Because I think it was Katrina from Gripple on the panel on Tuesday at Magna had said about the concern about like the osmosis that's needed by being in the office, being around people and around leaders to learn leadership skills and power skills. And are we seeing people be less able and less capable of doing that because they've not got the opportunity to learn as much if they're only kind of around people 60% of the time? So I just wondered if either of you have thoughts on that.
I don't know, Rachel, do you want to come in? Because you offer advice in this area, don't you, in terms of setting out the clarity?
Yeah, I think we both do, to be fair. Toby might be able to add to it, but yeah, as I mentioned it in the little talk, yeah, I think I would always advocate for hybrid working. I think the working from home is really important to allow people, and I think we've got to really focus on it being outcome based now, rather than us looking in on employees saying if you're not in the office you're not working hard. Let's look at its productivity and outcome. So if people are at home and they're able to be working 3 hours but they're working more productively in those 3 hours, then so be it. And I think having that trust and giving people that opportunity to work from home is actually quite a good skill set for them to learn. There's obviously challenges with managing performance from that point of view, and we've got to make sure that we're clear on what we're expecting from people. But I wouldn't put it as a negative that people aren't going to learn just because they're not in the office. I do think it's really important, however, that from a culture and a training point of view, people have got to be in at certain points. We'll all know that you pick up so much just from listening to your colleagues, or being able to shout over to somebody and ask a question and then a few people jump in. So I think there's a really fine balance, but I think you can actually make them work together. So don't see that working from home as a negative. There's a skill set that you've got to work independently. You've got to be able to shout out if you've got questions. You've just got to keep the regular checkups going and monitoring performance, but from a distance, I would say. So I don't know if Toby, you've got anything else to add on that?
Yeah, it's a proper Goldilocks zone, isn't it? It's just making sure there's a balance between the two. I've always found it's just pure transparency. So you have these businesses that say, we want everyone to be back in the office, and then Rachel, I'm sure you do the same as me. You go, why? And it oftentimes it just boils down to mistrust. And it's this idea that if you're working from home, you're not properly working. The more you can put in place KPIs. I mean, lawyers, every 6 minutes I know exactly where I am. That working from home a lot more straightforward. You know exactly what you're doing with it. But yeah, I'm a massive fan of both working in both ways and also feeding back from people. See the people, look, we really want people to be in the office, to learn from other people, to have that cultural element to it. If the feedback you get from the person you're dealing with is just like, I don't learn like that, I don't enjoy being in the office, and I am much less productive, so be it. What doesn't have to work in the same way for everyone. You can have that adjustment to it. But oftentimes, dealing with managers who are going through that process of, well, I need to be able to manage them and I need to be able to see them in the office. That's a very different question to they need to be in the office to be able to learn from me. And often it's just kind of boiling that down with people and working out which one it is and then adapting it from there.
Thank you. Yeah, because for me, it was less about the productivity and needing to manage. It was more about people being able to be role modelled and be able to, but as you say, Rachel, there's lots of different ways, and you can absorb that across different platforms. You don't have to do that physically in person, can you? Dan, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, just sort of building on that point, actually, Lou. So here in Doncaster, the Junior Law Society is really, really vibrant at the moment and doing some quite exciting things and being quite visible. And so my sort of question for Rachel and Toby was sort of how important do you think those young professional development networks are for some of the issues we've just been talking about? And is there anything else you'd like to see in that space that the region could sort of develop and put on as part of its response to this report?
I'll jump in first if that's right. Absolutely vital. Those relationships that you build people at a junior level are absolutely vital to any type of progression. I think networking skills, having the confidence to go and speak to people, and the confidence to just follow up with people or reach out to them, LinkedIn or whatever it is, having the understanding that building that network early on just massively helps you out in the future. So I think, yeah, even, no one wants to go into a room full of lawyers, but as a lawyer does that quite a bit. It is still really valuable because you get to network with your peers. You might get work passed back and forward between it. And it's just if you don't go and do that, you're never going to get that experience in it, and never going to see just how valuable it is, especially if it's not on. But no, it's great to hear that the Chamber's putting that or supporting those types of events.
Yeah, I think I agree with Toby on that. I think what would be interesting, Dan, from a Doncaster point of view, I know Sheffield, and as Carl mentioned, and part of the Sheffield Property Association, they have an Aspire group. So they have the general networking groups, but they can be quite intense. There's a lot of senior people in the room, and they put on the Aspire group, which is ever so popular. And they've also done, they put on coffee mornings basically to link up the two. So as people start to build their confidence up, they can start to almost softly mingle with the senior leaders and build up the confidence. And it'd be interesting to see from Doncaster's point of view if there's an area that there may already be something there, but where that can progress and give those younger have early careers individuals the opportunity to do that.
I don't know if colleagues from rival level Bucknell are on the call, because I know that they've developed a young professionals like leadership group within their own organisation, and that's now spread out to other professional services. It's not just limited to their own organisation, and I thought that was great because personally, when 25 years ago, when I first started working in Sheffield, I was part of a JCI, which was Junior Chamber International, which actually wasn't linked to the Chamber network, which is kind of strange, but it was like a natural feeder in, and it was brilliant for that. It was exactly that, of getting you used to how to network, like professional standards. We even had to be appointed like directors for various things. So you would sit in a board meeting setting, which completely like demystified minutes, agendas, and a board meeting format, which then meant when I then became a trustee, the first time I went in that room, it wasn't as kind of overwhelming. So I think there's like early careers and launchpad stuff it's really important, isn't it? And surprising how now 25 years on, I still see people from that network. It's just seeing that friendly face. Alex, you've got your hand up, and then I think Jack also had his hand up. So we'll come to Alex and then Jack.
Yes, I just wanted to reiterate, I'm from Rydal of Bucknall and I'm one of the people that organised the group. We call it New to Networking, and essentially it was everything you guys just talked about, getting a little comfort blanket of people in the same positions that meet monthly, regularly. And then, yeah, we've started opening it up to other companies to sponsor the event.
Alex, you might want to pop something in the chat if you can. It gives a link for people if they wanted to find out more.
No worries.
Smashing, thank you. Jack, you had your hand up, and I think there's just time for one more question or comment before we go over to Dan.
Yeah, I was just going to touch on the sort of hybrid working point. So we sort of mentioned about sort of junior employees and young people and sort of working from home, but I think there's also something about the inverse as well. So from a lot of the employees we've spoken to, we've seen sort of a shift in that at the start of hybrid working, a lot of young people wanted to work from home, and junior staff, that was a great offer. And I think now, as Rachel mentioned earlier, there is sort of a bit of a movement, and they all actually want to be in the office, and they all sort of value the development opportunities of working in and around senior colleagues. And from some of the businesses I spoke to, they sort of mentioned that actually now it's the senior colleagues that sort of more value that hybrid working and working from home, and it's making sure that they have the availability to be in to support the junior staff and to be around them to sort of allow those shadowing opportunities that Carl picked up on. So I think there's just something around the inverse there as well to consider.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's a really fair point. And I have seen a lot of firms invest in their office spaces and reconfigure them so that they are fit for the new world in terms of how we work and coming in to collaborate with each other. And there's no doubt about it, is that you need a mixture to be able to be productive, but equally have that quality touch point with your team when you need to in that time as well. I did just want to ask, I think we've got time for this. Just, Carl, in your report, it talks about quite, I suppose in some ways, a worrying lack of visibility for young people about the reality of all the careers across all the different professional services sectors, which I suppose for us that are in that world and see it all the time, I probably not anticipated that there would be such a kind of a chasm and a gap between the knowledge from the young people about what the career options are. And I just wanted to know, I popped something in the chat about Sheffield College and the Business Academy. But just in terms of like outreach into the schools, the colleges and the universities, if anyone on the call is cited or is doing any activity in that space that we can kind of amplify, because there's a huge amount of really great professional services firms in South Yorkshire, and we need to continue to like feed that pipeline of talent through to make sure that they get what they need. So I didn't know if anyone on the call was kind of involved in any careers promotion or placement projects, and how they've done any successful sort of interactions on that. And I'm putting everyone on the spot. And I know, I don't know whether Sam at the university, whether you wanted to come in with any initiatives or anything that you guys are running where people might have the opportunity to engage.
I'm not sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'm just messing about with my microphone, so hopefully it comes across nice and smoothly. Yeah, we do have quite a few. Well, we certainly have a priority at the very least as a university to engage with businesses in the local area, in the Sheffield City region and beyond as well. From the Careers and Employability Service, we do have a funded scheme that allows local businesses to take on a student for a set number of hours as an intern. And obviously, it's no financial cost to them. It does obviously require a lot of time and effort and input. But essentially, that is an opportunity for a business who might not usually engage with a university or a student or a graduate because of financial costs and because of lack of support, to take on a student who is from an area or a background which is underrepresented in particular industries. So that's one of the things we're probably most passionate about, really, in terms of our team, in terms of our service, is making businesses aware of the support that is available. I think one of the challenges sometimes with university engagement is that there are so many front doors and not always a person behind every front door. So the lack of awareness of the support that's available is sometimes the main barrier to the engagement between the university or college as well, and the employer.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Just to come in there, Lou,
yeah, please do,
on
Rach.
that,
Yeah.
this is from a while ago, but interestingly, I met an individual at one of the SPA events a couple of years ago, and forgive me if I get this wrong, but I think he was from the Philippines, and he was studying architecture at one of the universities in Sheffield. Forgive me, I don't know which one. And he'd said that quite a few of those on his course that were also from the Philippines weren't even applying for roles within the UK because there were no role models for them. So because they hadn't seen anybody working in that industry, they were automatically assuming they wouldn't get work. So I think that representation, he was obviously trying to break that mold, and he did get a job. So I think interest like representation's quite key for keeping people within the city and the region. So yeah, just like that.
Thank you. That is really key, isn't it? Like we say a lot, if you can't see it, you can't be it. So, right, we're just coming up to the hour. So if there's no other questions or comments from the room, I am going to hand over to Dennis, who's going to talk to us about next steps. So Dan, over to you, please.
Thanks, Lou, and thank you everyone for joining us today. Carl said at the top of this session, what our aim to do with this is to kind of harness and capture insight from the business community on a sort of sector by sector basis. And then through these reports, through these webinars, play it back, of course, to the sector itself to kind of sense check and get reflections, but more importantly, land it with sort of skills, community, providers, the education institutions, and our sort of public sector friends and partners. So if you're joining us from that world, we hope this has been useful to you. And following this call, and we do this every time with every sector, we sort of work through the region's sort of existing skills boards directly with providers to try and land this report and kind of create some change, or where we need to constructively challenge bits of the skills system that we think aren't delivering in accordance with kind of private sector demand, or quite sort of hitting the kind of giddy heights that they perhaps could and should be in the system. And again, just to kind of reaffirm, as Carl said, by design, these insight reports we've spoken to, a very, very small number of businesses. This is all about the kind of qualitative insight, the anecdotal stuff that hopefully provides a bit of richness alongside the kind of data and the fact that organisations like Simca and our sort of FE providers and so forth have in situ already. So if you've enjoyed this, we hope you come to our next one. Upcoming pieces of work. There is a webinar on the 8th of July for the aviation sector. That's clearly aligned with the ambition to get Doncaster Sheffield Airport reopened. And then thereafter, we have a webinar on AI-led businesses and the skills coveted by them on the 9th of September. And then in a slight divergence from kind of a sector-based approach, we're kind of looking at a more thematic issue of sort of the underemployment or unemployment of kind of veterans in South Yorkshire and how more businesses might get engaged with them and get them back into work. In addition to the webinars, you might also be interested in our ongoing knowledge and skills exchanges. Slightly different audience for those. They're more aimed at those people who are on the front line as sort of business advisors and engaging with our employer communities. But every other month, led by Lou's brilliant colleague, Chris at Sheffield Chamber, we're kind of bringing in two people from the skills community to talk to an audience, people who engage with businesses, doing a bit of a teaching to hopefully drive more kind of referrals into the skills system. So little explainers on what the issue of technology might be, the South Yorkshire Apprenticeship Hub, or how to access the skills bank, things like that. So we kind of drive more referrals into the skills system. Other little cheeky plugs before we close. In addition to the kind of insight work we're doing on the local skills improvement plan, we also have a piece of work called the Quarterly Economic Survey, which the three chambers undertake, as it says on the tin, every 3 months. A little bit more of a qualitative approach, that one. That's a sort of a big volume employer survey, about 400 responses each quarter. But what we do with that, in addition to kind of long-running questions about the state of the economy, actually some skills questions in there about propensity to recruit and training investments and so forth, we focus in on a hot topic each quarter. So the one we've just completed, and you will find out about at our webinar on the 17th of July, is about sort of business growth and international trade support. And then the one after that, and the webinar for that will be on the 23rd of October. Bit of a departure for us, looking at mental health issues in business leadership in South Yorkshire. And I think that'll be some really interesting stuff that comes on the back of that. Finally, in terms of the local skills improvement plan itself, we've got these next two deep dives into sort of veterans and AI related issues over the summer. And then from October onwards, there'll be something of a reboot as the LSIP gets slightly reimagined in a model that kind of has more co-ownership between the three chambers in South Yorkshire and the South Yorkshire Mayoral Combined Authority. We're going through a process with our partners there around just kind of finessing the focus and the shape of that. But the one thing I would do is say on this call to anyone who's in the skills ecosystem, we're here to help you. We're here to solve your problems. So get in touch with me or Lou or Carrie at Barnsley Rotherham, anyone you know in the Chamber network, and kind of help point us in the right direction. You know, as I said earlier, what we're seeking to do is get the insight from the business community, but to help our friends and partners in the public sector respond to that in an elegant and timely way. So if we can help you, we'd be pleased to do so. We're really pleased to see you at one of these webinars in the future. And I think, Lou, the last thing I've got to do is to thank everyone attending, and particularly to thank Rachel and Toby for their time and their very generous and mega insights. So I hope that's okay. Great to see everyone, and I hope to see you at the next one. Take care.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.